What kind of monster is Grendel? In a lot of other stories where there is some sort of monstrous enemy, there's often like a clear account of why it is an enemy. And also even some clear symbolism about like what sort of enemy it is, right? So the Cyclops only has one eye and it's limited in what it can see and understand, and it's selfish. Or the dragon has a kind of long history of traditional symbolism around it. Grendel seems to be like its own kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what Grendel looks like or how big Grendel is. For a while, I imagined like a Jabba the Hutt kind of figure, but that doesn't seem to do justice to it. What is motivating Grendel to sack the hall?
Right.
And also, what is the kind of monster that Grendel is? Like, what is that supposed to say? And maybe that's too much of like an English teacher question. Like,
no, I think
what is the representation? Maybe it doesn't have to have that. Maybe there's something wrong with my
English
question. But
calm down.
I love English professors. I'm just saying that sometimes we're taught to read things by imposing questions on them that aren't the ones that the text is actually inviting. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe Grendel doesn't represent something.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me the physical description has a sort of nebulousness.
Yeah,
that I think is probably fitting for the character. Right? We know that he comes from the sea or from this like lake thing because that's where his mother is. I think you could make the case that it's an exegesis and not an eisegesis, right? That it's actually drawing out from the text, not putting something in, that Grendel represents bloodlust and this consumption with the desire for violence, because that's all Grendel wants. He rejoices in violence for its own sake. Grendel is, in a sense, enslaved by his own bloodlust, right? His own passions. He requires this in order to be what he is. One of the things I love about Beowulf is that Grendel has a mother.
Also seems strange, right?
Yes.
Because at first you think Grendel is just this lonely beast who hates community, and so he's maybe envious of the joy and celebration of the hall, and so that's what's motivating his destruction, and then he wants to go back and lurk alone. But he's not alone.
Right.
He's a mama's boy.
He's a mama's boy monster. He's not even like with he's not even like with a male relative. It's funny that you're joking about that he's a mama's boy. I always thought that was interesting that it was his mother that came to avenge him rather than like his male cousin or his brother or his dad or his uncle.
Yeah, and I think
one of these people.
I think it's telling that it's his mother. There's no beauty in the description of the mother, except insofar as she's mother. It's surmised in the epic that Grendel is the offspring of Grendel's mother and something very evil. But again, it's nebulous. It's not Satan. It's not. It doesn't come out and say, "Well, the devil is the one who's behind Grendel and Grendel's mother." That would be too easy. There's something. It's more complex, which I think again gets at Beowulf as a humanizing text, right? That evil has an origin, but that the origin is more complex than we want it to be. Beowulf has a father. Grendel doesn't, and Grendel only has a mother. And so there's a sense in which it seems to me you could make the argument, right, that part of what's going on in Beowulf is that our origins of relation matter.
At least this much seems right to me. The extent to which a lineage is described and there's only a partial family for Grendel is a suggestion that there's both something natural and unnatural about him. There is something that we can empathize with, but that we also want to recognize as unhealthy. He's a natural creature of some sort, but lives underwater or in a swamp or a lake or whatever it is. He has a mother, as you say, but we don't understand if he has a father, and if he doesn't have siblings, apparently, too. So like you could argue there's something
One was it for his mother.
That's natural, but it's also unnatural, right? To be alone. It's not clear that there are neighbors or other. Is there any sort of society of these weird swamp creatures? We don't know that either.
Yeah.
So it's an evil force, but it's an evil force that we can somehow identify with because he's a son.
Exactly.
And he lives somewhere.
Right.
And they have a home, but it's not a comfortable home, and it's a home that's not a part of a community. It's a family that's not really a family. And all of that does seem to be part of the design of this monster.
And I think in the sort of ancient sense, it would be more like the sort of reflection on widowhood would be how I would see it. Insofar as the Israelites were constantly reminded to take care of widows and orphans, which means that you need to be constantly reminded, means that there's the tendency to forget. I'm going to bring in Brave New World because I teach symposium and I love that text. Linda's a sort of monster from both the Malpace narrative and the World State narrative.
Linda is
John the Savage's mother.
Oh, okay.
She was the mother on the reservation in a time when motherhood is itself a shocking, profane idea.
Right. Huxley describes Linda and John the Savage as living outside the community and not really being a part, and that Linda was looked at as gross and
because she gave birth naturally.
Well, not in Malpace. In Malpace, that's not the issue. Linda is gross because to the women of Malpace, because she's a paramour. She has no issues having sex with everyone. The women don't like that. The men are totally fine with it. In both the Malpace narrative and in the World State narrative, it's the women who question polygamy. It's the men who are okay with it. In Malpace, you have the women who are upset with Linda for having sex with their husbands. And in the World State narrative, you have these key conversations between Lenina and Fanny, where both of them have to reassure one another and reaffirm that they should be promiscuous. Lenina says to Fanny, "Don't you ever feel like not being promiscuous?" And Fanny says, "Yes, but one's got to go on making the effort."
I want to get back to the Linda, John Grendel mother parallel, because I've never thought of that before. Yeah. And it's one of the nice advantages of reading great text together is these serendipitous. I mean, and nobody could claim that was intentional. I guess it's possible that Huxley had Beowulf in mind, right? But probably not. But it doesn't matter because as readers, we can see interesting commonalities. So draw that out for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a sense you could make the connection. Again, whether Huxley conceived it or not doesn't really matter. When Linda comes back to the World State, Linda is seen as gross. Everyone laughs at her because she's this blubberous, disgusting mess that's burnt and has missing teeth and is like wearing dead animals. When she walks in, everyone laughs at first, and then it's revealed that this is mother. And there's this silence because that's a profane word. You can't say mother. And she comes running into Tomakin, which is John the Savage's father, who left Linda in Malpace because he didn't go looking for her. Anyway, but then I think John the Savage would be a fun way to look for a connection insofar as when we're first introduced to John, there's this human sacrifice going on in Malpace. And Lenina, who I would argue is one of the key characters who's humanized throughout Brave New World, but that's a whole nother argument. Lenina says to John, "You mean you wanted to be the one whipped?" And John says, "Yes, for the sake of the Pueblo, to make the rain come and the corn grow, to please Jesus and Pukong, and to show how strong I am," right? To show that I could let my blood, that I could be whipped many times and to let my blood flow. And there's this sense, it seems to me, insofar as the blood is this sort of life force, Grendel is consuming the life force of humanity. He's sort of parasitic on the community. Mm-hmm. And in the same way, it seems to me, Brave New World, the novel, whether Huxley intended it or not, Brave New World, the novel is asserting that human sacrifice, as well as the orgy-porgy, which Huxley clearly has in mind that the two are very similar. He makes it very clear in many narrative fashions, right? They have similar words, similar juxtapositions. In the orgy-porgy, Clara Detering says, she screams as though she's having her throat cut. The same phrase is used in the Malpace narrative, that the women scream as though they're having their throat cut or as though they're being killed. There's this same sort of ecstatic death going on. But it seems to me on a deeper level, right, what Brave New World is asserting, similar to Beowulf, this isn't bringing about human flourishing, that this is parasitic upon human flourishing. Because we have no clear idea of our origin, for Malpace, they're confused as to what to worship. In Brave New World, they're also confused as to what to worship. Both Malpace and the World State reject being as gift. The Malpace narrative is that human sacrifice is what makes the corn grow. By our action, we will make the god do what we want. And in that sense, that is the total rejection of being as gift, of gratuity. We are in charge. We will make the gods act how we want. In the similar way, the world state's rejection of being as gift. We see in the whole way of operating as a citizen is to move away from the order of creation, which exudes being as gift, right? It can't help it. And we see this particularly in chapter 4, where Lenina and Henry Foster are closed off from the natural world, from the moon and the stars, because those are depressing facts. And they sort of build up a wall, Huxley says, between them and the natural world through soma, and then between them and the natural world and the nature of their own sexuality through soma and contraception. He juxtaposes the two beautifully. In that sense, being is rejected as a gift, in the sense in which seeing the world as a sort of thing for me to use doesn't bring about human flourishing. And in that way, I think Grendel demonstrates the same reality, that insofar as we lack a shared recognition that our being is a gift as such from a giver who is good, Grendel also, it's unclear as his origin. Is his origin good? Does he see himself as a gift? Clearly not.
You could extend that even further, right? Because it's significant that Grendel wants to come and consume human flesh, right? But he doesn't just pick farmers out of the field or go to any random family. It's the hall, which is a site of celebration. In the evenings when they are celebrating. So it's precisely a feast that has to be consumed, but illicitly. He doesn't want to join the feast. He wants to destroy the feast and deny its right to be a celebration. It's a place where they celebrate, they drink mead, and they are happy warriors together. Right. And it's a home, but it's a home as a place for the community to celebrate together. And that's what Grendel is breaking up. And that's why Beowulf is a hero for restoring it, right? Because it's not just for saving lives. Yes. It's for saving celebration.
Yes. Mm-hmm. This is a sort of argument in favor of both the human and the Christian sense of Beowulf, right? Christianity presupposes and perfects what is deeply human, and that celebration is something central to what it means to be human. And when we don't have it, we cannot flourish.